Hi everyone, very vague here, and in this tutorial I'm going to be taking you through how to create this tote bag in Marvelous Designer and how we can then take this into Blender to give it a transparent material and place some objects inside of it. Let's start in the 2D pattern window by creating a rectangle at approximately 300 by 300 in size. I'm then going to copy this and position it in the 3D viewport at roughly the width I want the bag to be. I'm then going to give these shapes a new material labelled transparent and set the type to glass so we can see through it. Now let's create the rest of the main part of the bag by copying our rectangles and adjusting the widths and lengths using the Edit Pattern tool. Next, we'll begin adding in some of the detail lines and seams to the bag by using the internal polygon line tool and drawing in the dividing lines where we want. We'll then open up the quick menu and use the cut and sew option, which will automatically separate and stitch these together. These squares I'm creating will form the attachment points for the handle. We'll then copy these and extend them to begin creating the handle or strap itself. I'll then create matching squares on the handle before stitching these together using the segment sewing tool. I'm then just going to select all the elements of the bag I want to stay static during the simulation and select the freeze option on the quick menu before proceeding to simulate. So as you can see, we're getting a pretty saggy result, so let's go ahead and open up our material settings and change the physical property preset to something more rigid like trim, full grain leather. Now that that's looking better, we can adjust the height of the strap and then play around with the shape till we're happy with it. Next, I'm going to add in some zip pockets to our bag. So to do this, let's first cut out a small rectangle which will form the opening of the pocket. Now to make the inside of the pocket, it's really quite a similar process to how we've made the main body of the bag so far, but just at a smaller scale. So what we'll need is to create two squares with three sides, which we'll then organise in the 3D viewport and set up the sewing. Let's then move this to the inside of our bag and sew the top edges to the small slit we created earlier and simulate. We can now create a new material for our pocket and play around with the physical property settings till we find something we like. I found the Silk Fail preset gave me a pretty nice result. We can then add in some side seams for our pocket by adding in a couple of internal rectangles to the main body of our bag before sewing the sides of the pocket to the inside edges. Then finally, we'll add in a zip using the zipper tool, first going over our top line before then double clicking and going over our bottom line. Now I'm simply going to copy this whole side of the bag we've just created along with the strap and mirror paste it in the 2D pattern window. We can then place this in the 3D viewport and proceed to stitch all the components together before simulating. To give the bag some further realism, I added in some split lines to the side panels and changed their material preset to a nylon canvas. This made it less rigid looking and made it fall more naturally in the simulation. For the final touches, I added in some top stitching to all the edges of the bag using the segment top stitch tool. Now we'll go ahead and export our bag as an OBJ. If you don't want to export your top stitching as 3D geometry here, which can sometimes result in massive file size, you'll want to ensure the Select All Graphics and Trims box is unchecked. Alternatively, you can bake it into a UV map, which I covered in my last tutorial, so I'll link that video in the description below for anyone who's interested in that process. We'll now import this into Blender and start setting up our materials. So to do this, let's go into our shade editor and find the slot set up for metal, which in my case is number 10. And Marvelous Designer generally does a pretty good job at separating all the different materials and object types we had in our file to the OBJ, so just have a look through and play with the shaders until you find the correct one. So to give this a metallic finish, we're going to want to set the metallic slider all the way up to 1, and then change our roughness to something low like 0.1 so we get a nice glossy finish. Next, we'll go to the relevant slot for the main base part of our bag, and in my case, I want this to be transparent or sort of like a clear plastic finish. So to achieve that, I'm going to go down to the transmission slider and set this value all the way up to 1. And that's about as simple as I went with the materials for my bag. So now I'm just going to go ahead and import some objects that I'm then going to place inside the bag for the final render. I then added in a plane along with some area lights just to make the render look a bit more clean and simple. If you guys are interested in using any of these random objects I'm importing, like the makeup or iPhone, I'll have a link to them in the description below. And that's it guys, I hope you get creative with your bag designs, and feel free to tag me on Instagram if you use this tutorial, as I love to see your creations. Thanks for watching and see you next time.